How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting and welcome back to ReWrite. So, last time we actually saw the incarnation of the first, I guess Kotarou's first, fight between Guardian and Gaia. We see how he got involved trying to save Akane, who was then hiding in a tree, which we knew were facts that were leading up to the injury that eventually led him to become incorporated with some of the key's life force energy, which kind of kickstarts the very odd chain of events that somehow allows him to go back to school, despite the fact being very clearly much, significantly older than Akane and Kotarou. But we avoided that by following the fire and making a choice to not try to aggressively capture the key, but instead hide her. And by doing so, we're on a whole new path, apparently this path being, the critical juncture. And someone did mention in the comments that I need to go back and play through the choices that weren't the flame ones, where you try to grab the key. I will do that, but I think I might save that. I don't know. It might not be that important, so maybe I'll just do it on my own time. But I'll make sure I play them before I end the series. But for now, I'm kind of content with just following through with that decision as it was. And now I feel like we're about to see how we went overseas, because I think that's what we're leading to right now with this request with Asaka. So it'll be interesting, but yeah, it's really odd. There's some things that make a lot of sense with this reveal of how all this plays out, but some of it just kind of doesn't. One of the real ones is Nishikujo. Nishikujo is odd because she's literally a teacher of a class, for Kotarou. She also went to school with him in Guardian training. So why does she never seem to bring up the weirdness about him being in school again? I guess maybe she might have just been on the know. But why would she then encourage Lucia and him to get together the way she does? I don't know. It's just weird, in context now. If I were to go back and play that and be oh yeah, though she was the same age as Kotarou when they went through Guardian training. And now he's in high school again and she's not. But she also would know that he's not it's just weird. I hope they can explain that a bit, or is it just going to be one of those things that's just kind of dismissed? It's it's not that important. Every story has little moments like that, so I can't really hold it against it, but I can't get it out of my head because she became such a relevant character for the Terra story. And so to have her have had such a powerful connection to Kotarou, where they were literally essentially squad mates, that doesn't make them best friends or anything, but she was the more reasonable of the squad, and it's fairly clear that she had a measure of respect for Kotarou. And so it just seems weird. Am I wrong in thinking this? Maybe I'm a bit off the mark here, but for some reason it just feels like a really weird misstep. But then again, she always had a weird kind of flirty interaction with him, but she made it pretty clear that she was just joking. And when she got serious, she had no compunction with absolutely destroying or trying to destroy Kotarou. So I don't know. It's just it's weird. Anyway, we're gonna move on because I've had enough rambling. So let's just get started. Let's see where the story takes us today. I imagine it's going to be a bit more of a chill story, but we're going to be kind of diverging into something different, which is going to be cool and refreshing to see. And I think what's going to end up happening is we're going to see what does Kotarou do between now and the next Harvest Festival that we are familiar with, where all our favorite characters are all in the high school age and actively involved in Gaia or Guardian. And then he becomes reintroduced back into the story, but as an adult who is participating in those events. It's going to be really interesting to see. And again, the biggest clue we got from the Moon arc was the fact that he manifested in that as older than the others. And he was confused by that, but now we know why, which is kind of cool. I like how that was a little hint of what was to come. Anyway, moving on. Let's get started. So you want to know how to handle a gun.
はい。
I catch Asaka at a field headquarters while everyone's in the midst of preparations to pull out.
俺は火力がないので、銃を使えた方が役立てると思うんです。それに、ああいうものは俺に向いてる気が。
自分でそう直感したのか。
はい。
我々の表向きの顔の一つに、民間警備会社というものもある。知っているな。
Right.
はい、知っています。
I already predicted what conclusion my proposal would lead to.
天王寺、それは本当の仕事をしてもらうことになるが。
そういうきつい仕事がしたいです。命がけでも構わないです。
何か悔やんでいることでもあるのか。
え？
自分を罰したがっているものの顔だ。
それはわかりませんけど。
私も若い頃、戦火で自分を鍛えたことがある。貴様にも一皮向けるための荒領事がいるのかもしれんが、若すぎるようにも思える。
I like that. That's kind of cool that Asaka immediately kind of saw through and said, like, look, something's obviously bothering you. But he's also at the same time not trying to, like, pry. It's more of, all right, it's hard for... He's even got this kind of fatherly approach where he's just like, say right here, he's like, look, I have a hard time seeing you in the flames of war, in the middle of fight, of holding a gun and going to a war zone. But he's also acknowledging that it could do him good, and it was how he also became stronger, was going through something like that.
ぜひ。
I bow.
いいか、天王寺。超人というのは我が強いものだ。プライドで力を支えているからだ。以前はそれでよかった。神話の時代は。だが現代は英雄が好き勝手に暴れるには狭すぎるのだよ。そしてプライドを砕いたことのない者は一度の挫折にも弱い。長井は能力を失ったのだよ。
Right. So because she gave up, she essentially stopped being superhuman. Interesting. It's kind of cool. I actually almost like that. It ties the emotional, like, strong will, the willpower, the self-determinism to a superpower, which would explain why, like, not everyone has them or why they have different power levels. I think that's really cool. It's funny too because it reminds me of a spark of an idea that kind of coalesced with, there's a really great series. It's actually really interesting. If you've ever seen, was it like The Boys? It's like that, like, kind of dark superhero type of story. The original idea that made the first season, in my opinion, interesting, but later on it kind of lost this effect, was the idea that, like, supes or superpowered people were kind of these, like, unofficial oligarchs who could kind of just, because they were just so strong, they could kind of just do whatever they wanted. And there was a group of normal people who were kind of sick and tired of that and felt it was wrong and decided they were going to rise up and do something about it. And so, like, the idea in the beginning was, like, normal people outplaying and outsmarting superpowered people. If you ever liked that theory and you don't mind it not being nearly as gritty, I highly recommend the Reckoner series. It's a series by Brandon Sanderson, but the whole concept about that is that there's a major event, and when the event triggers, people all around the world manifest superpowers. But they also manifest insane, just, like, egotistical, like, rampages, you could almost say. Essentially, it plays off of a similar idea that the superhumans are strong-willed and egotistical. In this, it kind of is like the worst of people become superpowered. And so it's a world where there's no heroes, only villains, because the people who gain powers are people who have no real problem with doing terrible things to cement power. So, like, the entire world's governments collapse. It becomes, like, essentially city-state wars where super powerful super beings kind of reign, like, as almost demigods across the planet. And it's really cool. Like, the way that they explain it and go through things with, like, the narrative is really cool and well done. And it's very similar to that. And so it keeps making me think of it because the idea is that these superpowered individuals all have this, like, this feeling that they deserve to have power and deserve to be in control of the world, like egotistical. But they take it to a much more extreme. Also, it's a whole story about normal people rising up and trying to defeat these supers, and how they have to be really clever, and how they have to exploit whatever resources they can get as this kind of underground rebellion type of group that's trying to take out supers across the world, called the Recorders. It's really cool. So yeah, highly recommend that book series. And it's funny because it's technically considered young adult, but it's really dark for a young adult. I wouldn't say it's like really dark in the scope of all fiction, but for a series that's shelved in the young adult section, there's quite a lot of violence and death. But hey, that's fine. Anyway.
失った。
そういうこともある。時に超人も精神を病む。PTSD に陥ることがあるが、やはり力は弱体化することが多い。
Interesting.
我々の力は心のコンディションとリンクしているということだ。
自信がないと強くなれない。
ありすぎても問題だ。三国がどうなったか忘れてはいまい。
Yeah, those are some great lessons actually. It's saying that like if you despair or you lose confidence, you can lose your powers, but if you're overconfident, you can put yourself in a situation you can't survive.
私は英雄志願を何人も見てきた。彼らが身勝手に突出して失敗した作戦の数々を。
I gotta say, based on the circumstances and the emotional like aptitude of superpowered beings, running Guardian in any capacity would be a nightmare, because essentially you have to balance the absolute the necessity for people who are like the core like strength of your organization to be egotistical, self-centered, and self-driven people, and yet you also need to try and make sure that they stay cohesive and working as a team, because like solo, even the strongest can get overwhelmed by summoners. And so it's like it's essentially you have to have your cake and eat it too. It's like, how do you do that?
必要な力をつけに行くことが目的で、英雄になりたいわけではないのだな。
はい。
生きて戻ったなら、私の良い兵士になってくれるかね。
必ず。
よし。
Asaka rests his hand on my shoulder. It's been a while since I've seen this kind of side.
悲劇を見てこい。
Go experience some tragedies. I give you my blessing. Go and rip your soul out. And his dark-colored eyes stared at me. Various thoughts go through my mind. Memories of my life up until now flash by one after another. My stagnant, ambitionless life. I've always been looking for something to sever that cycle. All this time, I couldn't find it in the classroom. I couldn't find it at home. I couldn't find it in Martel. I haven't found it in Guardian. To top things off, I even betrayed the organization by letting the key escape. What I felt from the key, it was akin to salvation. That's why I can't work in Japan anymore. I have to escape. Into the wider world. And here we go. I like how the branching timelines now has so much meaning. I thought it really was just a manifestation of like the choices you could make and the divergence that occurs, and that is what it's displaying. But like we also know it's part of like a metaphysical like document, like a blueprint. And here we are, back where we started. Feels like I've woken up from a long reminiscence. You have. We were here. Instantly, it feels as if stifling heat. I feel the stifling heat at the back of my throat. I dreamt of what my life was like up until recently, as if it was all events from over a decade ago. Truth is, it hasn't even been 6 months. Oh wow. I guess I thought it had been longer. But it has been very packed 6 months. Almost a decade's worth of experience has been crammed in. After those events, I was immediately thrown into a real storm. The first few months did nothing but rigorous basic training. Compared to the grueling hell that was put through here, the training in Japan just felt like a warm-up. The training regiment for superhumans demands a murderous amount of stamina. Back then, it took everything I had just to keep up. Fortunately, or otherwise, it left me no room to worry about anything. I experienced a whole lot of firsts. The first time stepping on a foreign soil. The first time shooting a gun. The first time seeing what true poverty looks like. The first time being attacked by armed insurgents. And today, it's the first time I've killed someone. I can't really explain the experience well. It's just that it feels like I finally have a new punishment or something like that. In truth, I already know I've only added another sin to my list. In any case, it serves to create a clear distinction, breaking from the past. Literally, we've deviated completely. As I learned the rules of being a soldier, I crossed the line of no return. Well then, there isn't anything I ought to look back on anymore, is there? The soil of this foreign land is red. The blood of its inhabitants is also red. That's all I can say, really. The car returns to camp. After unchambering the round, I flip the gun safety on. At last, a breather. This is the only place where I can let my guard down. After I help lug some equipment around, I head back to the hangar we use as a barracks. It's as messy as always. Boxes filled with guns, ammunition, and equipment, people, soldiers, and the smell of gunpowder. The area around the bunk bed that I'm using is my territory. One of the companies the Guardian operates provides private security details to areas that are in a state of conflict. This is what TP Corp does. Most of its clients are governments and companies from developed countries. Protecting VIPs, engagements, logistics, our work covers all aspects of military affairs. In this age, even actual militaries outsource various military tasks. But our work is even more specialized than that. TP Corp's selling point is that everyone is actually a superhuman soldier. We can accomplish even the most daunting and demanding missions. Yeah, against other people, they would be, like, terrifying. After putting my gun away, I take off my gear. I lie down on the bed. When I close my eyes, the sound of people talking particularly stands out to my ears. Apart from the simplest of conversations, I can barely comprehend English. I'm trying, though. But thanks to that, my squad mates pretty much consider me dead weight. It's standard to get kicked or punched if you don't understand orders. Even though I more or less understand, I'm still being treated like a nuisance. I don't have the skills either. In fact, the more outgoing a superhuman is, the more closed-minded they are. They congregate with others like them, and most are far from discriminatory and bigoted than a typical person. Those with strong abilities form cliques and look down on those who have weak abilities. Man, I would hate Guardian. Like, I would do terribly in Guardian. I'm the latter, pretty much the same as when I was in Japan. I nodded off for a bit there. When I open my eyes, I see Louis' long, dark-skinned arms hanging off the bed above me, like some kind of corpse. I can hear him snoring. Luis, I think it's supposed to be Luis. Luis is one of my few friends I have. Thanks to him, I can just barely keep up with work. He's a real rarity, and I'm thankful to have him. Luis and I arrived here at the same time, though there's an age difference. We're pretty much batchmates. Given that Luis is Latino, isn't great with speaking English himself, the two of us immediately got along. The fact that neither of us could understand what the other was saying didn't even pose a problem. Heck, it made things easier. He's a dozen years older than I am, but his innocence doesn't make that apparent in any way. His skills are, well, better than mine are to say the least, but he's also taken lightly.
本当は僕は投げやりが得意さ。
Ah, interesting. He tells me this without any intent to hide it. We can't use our abilities in the open as long as we have joint operations with normal military personnel. Regardless, he keeps a spear made of custom alloy under his bed just as a contingency. I recall the boomerang that Mikuni used. Holding it in my hand, it is ridiculously heavy. I can't even imagine possibly being able to throw this properly. In our days off, Luis and I often go into town. The town itself has long been in a state of anarchy, with public order constantly deteriorating. UN peacekeepers are stationed here now, but there are at least 3 armed groups in the town waging a bloody war against each other. The reason's complicated. I only have the vaguest understanding. Luis told me it's really just a struggle over the rights to something big, but it's veiled under the guise of a civil conflict. I haven't the slightest clue what rights they've even been fighting over in this big, desolate town, though. Even with the military stationed here, it still isn't safe. It's not uncommon for an improvised explosive device to suddenly go off in the streets. Can you imagine? That's a reality for people in the world that live in this like every day. And it's just it's almost incomprehensible to think that Like, the biggest thing I worry about is driving to the supermarket because there's idiots on the road and other cars that might not pay attention and run into me. Could you imagine trying to, like, walk across town just hoping you don't explode that day? Generally, the targets are either members of an opposing side or the peacekeeping forces themselves, but civilians end up falling victim to them as well. Throughout the day, you'll hear the sporadic echoes of gunfire and explosions. That's just the kind of place this is. Despite all that, the people here continue to live. They don't run away. The food in the town is a bit better than the stuff in camp. Up until the UN's intervention, the town had constantly been teetering on the edge of starvation. It's because the insurgents would steal all the food that they produced. Its situation's much better than it was before. Perhaps because of the high tolerance, neither alcohol nor tobacco are particularly attractive indulgences for superhumans. To a superhuman, food is the simplest and best kind of luxury. There are those who wolf down entire extra giant portions of food all by themselves, others who hoard bars of chocolate, and others still who order huge chunks of meat. In the market or mess hall, these are the situations I often find my coworkers in. After eating a hearty meal, we usually play soccer. In an elementary school's courtyard, I play ball with a bunch of other local children. Of course, I restrain my own power to make sure they don't suspect me. Even though we can't understand each other, there are no problems. You don't need words to play together. Of course, even though we hold back significantly, Luis and I end up being the heroes of the match. The more we move, the more our athletic abilities will make them apparent, supposedly. There are a lot of kids here. We play our little game without taking any breaks. Luis and I are driven to keep moving. It doesn't feel bad at all. Eventually, I start having fun too. And I get just a little carried away. I kick the ball and it flies so high into the air I can't even be seen anymore. The kids just stare upward, mouths agape. I overdid it. You think? Luis steps in and complains, asking if I have a hidden spring in my shoe. He makes me take my shoe off to prove it to everyone. Using some sleight of hand, he pulls out a small spring from inside.
見ろみんな、バネがあったぞ。卑怯者だ。
Luis manages to fool them with a bit of magic. It looks like the spring is part of a busted rifle. Luis has constantly been saving my hide like this.
ルイスはどうしてここに来たの？
どうしてとは？
One day I try asking him.
俺は国に居づらくなってきたんだ。
そういうやつは多いだろうな。
そうなのかな。みんな我が物顔で騒いで悩みなんてないみたいだ。
空騒ぎをしているだけさ。みんな怖いし不安だ。騒いでいる間は強い自分でいられると思っている。
Yeah.
そんなものなのかな。
僕はね、普通にサッカー選手になりたかった。子供の頃から運動ができたから絶対なれると思ってたんだ。
黒服が来た。
プロテストに応募した直後だったよ。諜報局の普通に派手なシャツを着た連中だったけどね。で、お前は生まれつき体が強い病気だから不正になるのでスポーツ選手にはなれないって言われた。
Interesting. So it's interesting to think that like other nations and their branches have different excuses.
どこも一緒なんだな。
才能を金に変えることができる。貧乏人には悪い話じゃない。
He laughs frankly. As always, he has a perfect smile. Our days on duty continue. Patrol duty is particularly rough. Whenever the insurgents launch an attack on foreigners, they always ambush us on the road. If they control the supply routes, they can loot the goods being transported. Once they accomplish that, they can just stare the town down. They'll be as good as slaves. With the crucial points converging into a lone road, it's even more dangerous than the town itself. Ambushes and IEDs hidden in wrecked cars are a constant source of trouble. Foreign VIPs getting attacked 8 or 9 times out of 10. Their goal? A ransom. Some of them rose up in the name of national liberation. Most of them have pretty much disintegrated into nothing more than bandits. Sometimes we have casualties on our side too. I haven't even been here very long, but I've witnessed the deaths of 2 of my allies. Compared to what happened in Kazamatsuri, I didn't feel anything. Guess I'm getting accustomed to death. That's sad. When I'm on leave, I spend my days with the kids. In terms of friends, they're the only ones I have apart from Luis. Even though they're poor, they always have smiles on their faces. I eventually remember their names and faces and can even tell them all apart. When the elementary school got back up and running with the UN's help, everyone was overjoyed. A large part of the reason why is the free school lunches, though. Some of them are really eager to learn too. One of them is a girl interested in computers. She's determined to get better at programming so she can pull herself out of poverty. Luis and I already decided not to try and help them from our own pockets. We have our reasons, one of them being that this problem has no end. No matter how hard we try, we can't save every single one of them. We figured it could at least contribute some old used computers for them to use, though. Laptops 2 generations old are as good as free in and around Asia. I buy those en masse and ship them over here. Rather than the cost, finding someone willing to deliver them here is what poses more of a difficulty. Finally, I managed to get my hands on the computers and donate them to the school. Though it was nothing but an act of philanthropy to get to relieve my depression, I'm pretty satisfied. I hit my 2nd year of being a hired gun. It's around then that my real mission comes in. Ooh. More than 80 superhumans are gathered in this underground briefing room. The TP Corps' usual operations are primarily undertaken by a small number of independent operators. It's because we need to keep the existence of superhumans away from public knowledge. For example, we excel at high-risk counterterrorism and infiltration operations. It's rare for this many superhumans to act all at once in force.
麻薬取締局からの情報提供により、市内武装勢力の資金源となってきた新型麻薬の生産工場が判明した。
The drug is extremely addictive and has been spreading throughout the world, with this region at its epicenter. Its effects? Pain relief, sedation, and an intense euphoria, but it's also known as the drug that will suck the life out of people.
情報担当が
Sounds like fentanyl.
状況を説明する。作戦の目的は2つ。武装勢力の排除、生成施設の破壊だ。この麻薬工場がそうだが、周囲に数十体の魔物が確認されている。
Oh, now that explains a lot. It's interesting. So Gaia is using drug production. The screen displays a map of the area.
工場の位置はここだ。ゴーストタウンが不法占拠されている。
航空攻撃で一網打尽にしちまうのはダメなのかい？
厄介なことに工場は国境線付近だ。緊張状態にある隣国を刺激するような真似はできない。ルートは北と南に2本。この道路沿いの全域が作戦区域となる。
道路沿いの広大な土地は何だ？
畑だ。道路との高低差は30メートルもない平地だが、身を隠すには手頃な穀物が実っている。警備も比較的手薄だ。侵入はここから行う。
It almost seems too convenient, though.
確認されている魔物にはハウンド、バードなどが大半だが、5メートル級の中型個体が最低2体存在する。フェーズ1で作戦区域に侵入。フェーズ2で潜伏拠点の設置。フェーズ3は偵察。フェーズ4で工場を制圧する。薬物や原料は押収。ガイア主義者は見つけ次第射殺する。
Dang, not even trying to get them for information.
戦闘が予想されるチームは属性や装備を検討しておいてくれ。
We discuss a variety of things. Travel routes, combat equipment, raiding procedure, information on familiars, the building structure, the facilities floor plan, contingency plans, rendezvous points, call signs. It takes an entire day to exhaust every single possible topic we can cover. By the time we finish, everyone has gone limp from exhaustion. Since both Luis and I have pretty questionable English, the both of us are confirm what was discussed with each other.
魔物使いを拘束するという単語はなかったよね。
射殺すれば魔物の動きが止まる。それで別チームを支援できる。
ああ、そういうことか。
レイス、ボンド、来い。我々バリアントチームは制圧班だ。
Oh, they still call him Bond. I was confused for a second. 2 days later, we're transported to the area of operations. It's just before dawn, but the starlight remains strong. There are no obstacles in the wilderness. It allows us to see much further than we expected.
ここからは徒歩だ。着いたら潜伏地点を構築。偵察が戻り次第、俺たちも出るぞ。
After heading northward for about an hour, we spot the drug lab just like the map says and create a makeshift hideout. We bring in our supplies. Next, we do a final check of our equipment. a rifle with a grenade launcher attachment, and a high-caliber handgun. Flashbang grenades are also effective against familiars, and we'll need regular grenades as well. We'll need to carry plenty of spare mags against the familiars. Next, walkie-talkies are effective over 400 meter distance. We skip the night vision devices or anything our abilities can compensate for. Instead, everyone brings their own specialty weapon. Since I don't have one, I bring a hatchet and a knife from the provisions. Luis brings that spear I saw earlier, placed in a golf bag. All this stuff adds to about a dozen kilos, but it's no trouble at all. That's crazy. The time comes and we head out. After reconfirming our route, we enter the ruins while downwind. For a while, we don't bump into any familiars or people. We follow a small, deserted concrete path. Under the starlit night, the two teens with 8 shadows skulk around in deathly silence. The point man signals us by hand that an enemy is approaching. Dog, just one, 130 meters ahead. Its keen sense of smell will make combat with it difficult to avoid. We all have our guns poised. If we take this familiar out, the summoner will know as well. Luis readies his spear. If we can take it out without audible gunshots, then we can throw them into disarray. As everyone looks on, Luis hurls the driving motion with barely any wind-up. The spear flies low and sharp, skewering the dog through the head and into its chest. Someone whistles. I pull out the hatchets and dash forward, smashing the familiar's head right into the ground. It turns into dust. Just around the same time, a gunshot rings out from another block. An ominous air immediately fills the facility. Hunter team will sweep the first floor, while we and Valiant team will sweep the second floor. In almost a single bound, we scale the wall and leap into the second floor window one by one. Just as Intel said, it's an empty room with a bare concrete floor. There are empty plastic drums in the corner of the room. After pairing up, we split off and explore the rooms. Luis and I team up. I look down the stairwell and spot a large, rusty, abandoned machine on the first floor. No sign of people or familiars. Oh, I don't like this. This is starting to feel like a trap. The building had several rooms along the catwalk. The team leaders get clockwise while we go counterclockwise, clearing each room one by one. Once we get to the fourth room, I sense someone's presence. Luis and I exchange hand signals.
手榴弾。
いらない。
After nodding to each other, we stick to the sides of the wall. We jump in one after the other and quickly point our guns into the room. In my half of the room, I see 2 men. One is looking out a window while the other is sitting in a dilapidated couch watching TV. Before the window guy even points his gun at me, I quickly shoot him dead. 1 in the head, 2 in the chest. He falls over. The sofa guy reaches for the desk where he's been resting his legs, a pistol laying atop it. In a flash, he prepares to shoot me. I fire him at close range and it takes 4 shots before he stops moving. After violently convulsing, he goes limp. Dead. I check Luis's side. He's already taken 1 out. That man had been sitting in front of a long-range radio. It looks like he was in the middle of sending a message. But Luis shot the radio as well. The TV the sofa guy was watching is monitoring the passage inside the facility. I break that too. The next rooms we enter, toss a grenade or shoot through the door with a volley of gunfire before entering. If there's any survivors left in the room, usually they're on their dying breaths, we shoot them dead. I signal to the team leader that we've cleared all the rooms. Across from us, he nods and points down. Hunter team downstairs is waving at us. Looks like they finished their sweep of the floor too.
ルイス、1階に合流。
了解。
Ooh. Just as I'm about to head downstairs, I see something charged through a pile of scrap. 2 from Hunter team are bulldozed by a huge thing that charged in. They're thrown into the air, slamming against one of the machines. The familiar throws its tail around like it's drifting as it breaks with its front legs. The spines of the 2 hunters are snapped at odd angles, together with both their arms that held up in defense. It's an alligator type, a medium-sized familiar. It's close to 12 meters in length, but still as agile as a small animal. That's the thing that's terrifying. It's like, these familiars are superior to animals in the sense that, like, their mass doesn't seem to hinder them at all. So you just give them big and bulky, but they're just as fast as anything. Normally, like, size is like a limiting factor. I fire at it from the second floor. The alligator stands up. It easily reaches up to and beyond the second floor. It tears off the catwalk with its jaws. Luis and I fall to the first floor. Shaken, I struggle to regain my bearings.
こっちだ。
I head in the direction someone yanks me toward. I can't find the leader. And what about Hunter Team? The lumbering familiar thrashes about, scattering the heavy machines and making it difficult to get to the other side. Someone is tossed together with the machines.
あれは勝てない。魔物使いを止めよう。
そうか。
We run into another block of the facility.
奴は周囲の敵に敏感に反応してた。目の代わりをしていた魔物使いが近くにいるはずだ。
We have to find the summoner ASAP. Luis is ahead of me. He's fast. It's taking all I have to keep up with him. Up ahead, a young man stands up from the shadows and attempts to point a gun at us. A smaller familiar by his feet also gets up. In front of us, a piercing danger signal also rings. My consciousness sinks even deeper into fight mode. My awareness grows sharper and everything turns to slow motion. Our positions decide which is our opponent. Luis against the summoner, and I against the familiar. Luis fires his gun as he runs, while the man hides behind the machinery. I leave that to him, focus my attention on the familiar. It's 150 centimeters long from front to back. It's a four-legged beast. It's rather slender, almost dainty even. The horns on its head are gnarled like a witch's finger and ground sharp.
ガゼルベースの魔物。
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because you can have they have the spiral horns, I think, is what he's saying. Not exactly the very first familiar I want to fight. The gazelle kicks off the floor, vanishing for an instant. I slide my eyesight upward, but I can't catch sight of it. It must have leapt much higher than I expected. Even though I haven't been able to keep track of it, I hear it jump again. What did it kick off from? Ooh, interesting. Again, it's one of these things where I don't even get the choices here, which is interesting comparatively to when we found the key. Those were actual choices for once. But nope, ignore it and run. The familiar is faster than my reaction time. There's no way I can fight against it head on. Therefore, I run. I can already tell that the moment I stop running, I'm going to die. I hear a hard ringing sound from behind me. The ground near me shakes. That must be the horns piercing the floor in a downward attack after jumping off the ground, followed by leaping off the ceiling. I keep the run running without even turning around. I dive behind a giant piece of machinery in some kind of belly roll. Clang. The tip of its horn pierces straight through the other side, its penetration power akin to that of an armor-piercing bullet. A familiar thrashes about, struggling to pull its horn out and shaking the entire machine. This is my chance. I hop back over the machinery and put the familiar on Nelson hold, grabbing the front legs of the creature that struggles to yank its horn out. I pull my knife out, stab it deeply in the flank over and over again. It resists without end. I can tell it's slowly freeing its horns.
やばい。
I glance behind me, see Luis is a flying kick square against the summoner's jaw, launching him into the air. His neck bends at an awful angle. He's definitely dead. The massive muscle struggling in my arms immediately loses shape. If the summoner dies, the familiar will lose all power and power to continue moving.
大丈夫かい？
素早い魔物と大きな魔物の相手はしたくない。
ほぼ全種だ。ボンド、あの奥だ。倉庫がある。
The summoner of the earlier mid-sized familiar is most likely in there. We stick to either side of the door. We can't afford to give them any time to react to us. I kick down the door, Luis jumps in, unleashing a hail of bullets at the first figure he sees. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I don't like this. After that, the gun goes silent.
冗談。
We head further in. Gun at the ready, Luis stands unbelievably defenseless. There's a large group of people huddled together at the back of the room. Some of the people are bleeding. Small people. No, children. Children whose faces we recognize.
休み。
The kids are here. The kids we played soccer with. The kids we gave computers to. The kids we shared candy with. Their very kids are here. Over 10 of them. Many are already clearly dead. Some are dying before our eyes, convulsing from cardiac shock. At their feet are puddles of very warm blood.
Kotarou.
Right. I told her my real name. Her eyes are black and wet.
ルイス。
He mutters something to himself in his own language, not responding.
ルイス！
I shake him hard and he falls to the ground. He throws his gun away in absolute disgust.
撃ってから気づいた。撃ってしまった。
Even I'm about to lose it. My heart's pounding insanely fast. I'm as bewildered as can be. That's right. In this country, even children end up taking up arms. Things like this can happen.
暮らす。お金。
But that doesn't matter right now. What is the problem? I don't know. What is the problem I ought to be facing right now?
私たち。皆、人と心通う。
With the spirit.
全員。
Jasmine nods.
じゃあ、
They're all summoners. Several of them are contracted to the mid-sized familiar. A huge familiar requires an equally huge amount of energy. By having it siphon life energy from several summoners, the individual burden is lessened amongst them. I finally managed to collect myself.
殺すの。
She looks at my gun as she asks. I mean, what's really crappy is like they essentially were wielding weapons against us. How could I possibly do that? I place it on the floor. I move closer to the children, but they start screaming.
静かに。
I check what the children are still, the children are still alive and which have gone still. I see many faces were alive and well just days ago, but have now stopped moving. The rifle's bullets easily penetrated their bodies and wounded several of them. Almost none of them are left unscathed. Depending on where you get shot, it might actually be better than a bullet went all the way through you, but that's only if you can get treated immediately.
大丈夫だ。今助ける。
人と通じて死ぬ。
The Jinn. Is that the
不幸ではないです。
ジンって、精霊か。
So that's what they believe. Including Jasmine, there are 5 survivors. 3 of them can walk. The other 2 need immediate treatment. For starters, I checked their injuries. I did receive some medical training as a soldier, at least. Luis is crouched down by the other kid.
ルイス、
またやっちまった。
不運だったんだ。
不運？どっちの不運だ？友達を撃ち殺す僕、それとも撃ち殺される子供の方。
Both?
どっちもだ。
わかるはずがない。あの一瞬で。
そうだね。
こんな小さいのに。
He totters over and touches one of the bodies they shot to death.
こんなのひどいよ。
Oh yeah. I have no words to offer him. All I can do is agonize at how powerless I am. Okay, putting aside our duties as rank and file soldiers, I need to figure out what we ought to do here. Luis's radio buzzes. It's a call from our team leader. Luis and I exchange looks. What should we do here? That's the question of the freaking ages. Fetch me.
こちらバリアント4。猛獣使いを射殺しました。
After receiving our reports, the leader comes in. He looks terrible. His left arm is drenched in blood and it seems to have been completely shattered.
魔物使い6名を無力化しました。
He looks down at the 4 corpses and the 2 that are breathing raggedly. And he finishes them off. The leader pulls out his pistol and shoots the 2 injured.
隊長！
射殺と命令したはずだぞ。
The 2 children aren't moving anymore.
なんだその目は。子供の怪我人を殺すのは道義に反するとでも言いたいのか。
Yeah? Even though I know what you're gonna say.
はい。
He sends me flying with a punch. I consider punching back, but Luis stops me.
了解。
役立たずが。制圧は完了だ。応酬を手伝え。夜が明ける前に撤収する。
The leader exits. I begin to rewrite my abilities. I can't punch back the way I am right now. I increase my muscle performance, boost my metabolism, sharpen my senses. I need them to be 4 times as strong. That way I can smash his face in completely. I'll crush his jaw and make it impossible for him to ever chew again. My entire skeleton creaks, my heart feels like a burden, my brain boils, my blood pumps. Oh. My life force is...
危険なことをしているな。やめろ。
My cheeks are yanked hard. That brings me back to my senses.
ルイス。
今能力を使おうとしていた。わかった。どれほどの能力か知らないけど、それは命を縮める。二度と使うべきじゃない。
俺はなんとなく多分2人は殺されるって。
小太郎。
捕虜なんて取るわけがない。手当てなんてしてくれやしない。心の奥では理解してた。でもやった。ヤスミンたちを助けるにはこれしかなかったからだ。
そうだ。 その通りだ。
Oh. So he saved the others by hiding them. The other 3 survivors gingerly sneak out from the lockers lined up by the wall. Even after seeing the 2 other bodies, they didn't even cry. They simply cast their eyes down in sadness.
みんなわかってる。どの道助からなかった。
How much you want to bet that we're gonna actually sing them again?
ふざけやがって。あいつ。
I found myself here after putting my last ounce of hope in them. But even the last bit of hope has been shattered. I hate them. Now I know I hate Guardian. They're racist, they trample on others. Asaka and Luis are friends, a true rarity. But this has made me realize I can no longer be part of this organization. It's not because my friends were killed. It's just that my very being can tell that I hate it.
これからどうする？
With a rather tired expression, Luis looks over at Jasmine and the others.
行こう。同じ気持ちだ。
ルイス。
Will this betrayal mean I'm leaving Guardian?
急ごう。裏切りはすぐにバレる。
Timidly, the girl quickly cuts in.
爆撃される。
Taking the kids with us, we head to the back entrance of the factory. We don't rendezvous with the main squad. We plan on running away just like this. The client for the drug production facility was a country. Apparently, one of the neighboring countries with tense relations is involved. They've already been informed about the raid. Jasmine tells me that if that happened, the facility will almost certainly get bombed to erase all evidence. Apparently, there's been a precedent with the exact same situation.
どこに逃げる？
Luis opens the map.
工場と周囲の畑は焼くはず。だから安全なポイントは？
The entire surrounding area is a field. Escaping by foot has its limits.
ここなら近い。けど、それでもかなり移動しないと危険だ。
行こう。他に何の当てもない。
Actually, if it was just us, we'd have a good chance of escaping. But right now, we've got to keep pace with the children. Children are physically the same as normal people and are already fatigued from having to supply life force to a familiar. Of the 3 rescues, Jasmine is the oldest. The other 2 are so young they can barely speak their own language, let alone English. Fetch me. The children send us worried glances.
平気だ。逃げられる。2人の面倒を頼む。
I rest my head on her shoulder. A tinge of relief returns to her weary face.
小太郎、西と北西に似たようなルートがある。判断がつかない。どっちだと思う？
Ooh. Northwest.
北西だ。
どうしてそう思った？
直感。
OK。
He's like, whatever, man. Maybe it's because I replied like in those action movies, but it looks like Luis really liked that. Honestly, it really was all an instinct. There isn't anything harder for me to explain than this. Honestly, in a situation like this where our lives are at stake, even I'm not sure if it's okay to decide like this. I think it's interesting. It's almost like his real superpower is like the fact that an echo of him touched like and imprinted on the God, what do they call it? I can't remember. It hasn't been that long. Why, like the plan, the document, the tree on the like the branches of choices, and it's like that's his new superpower. Really, it's the fact that his instincts tell him exactly where he needs to go to succeed. But this should be fine, I'm sure. I leap over the fence and slip past the shed. I make it to the field. It's overgrown with shrubs that reach up to my waist. So these are the raw materials they use for their drugs.
この広さを焼くのか。
If they dropped wide area incendiary bombs, we'd have nowhere to run. We'd be barbecued alive.
急げ！数キロだ！
He's right. All we can do now is run. I carry one of the kids. Luis carries the other boy at the same age. Meanwhile, Jasmine runs on her own.
来た。
There aren't any disquieting signs in the night sky. I've never experienced a bombing before, so I have no idea what it's like. But it seems like Luis can detect something. Seeing as Jasmine has to keep up with us, it doesn't look like we'll manage to escape anytime soon.
ストップ。ここでやる。
やる？
Yeah,
何を？
do what?
迎撃してみる。この周辺だけでも。
Ooh, that's risky. Luis sits down the kid on the golf bag. He unfurls a rolled-up cloth like spreading out a carpet. There rests his special spear, as well as a long spatula-shaped spear thrower. I've seen it a few times in historical documentaries on TV. By using a spear thrower, you can greatly increase the effective range and accuracy of a thrown spear.
爆弾を迎撃するっての？
できないことはないはずだよ。でも、できないかも。だから、小太郎は子供たちを頼む。
ルイス、何言ってるんだ？そんなことできない。
でもやらなきゃ。ほら。
I can barely see a small airplane where he's pointing. I can tell how far it is, but it's really high up. It's dropping something from its fuselage.
滑空ミサイルだ。多分熱圧弾頭。
Dang. all they look like to me are little flickering dots.
ばらまいてる。あれのどれがここに落ちる？
それはわかる。南から焼き払っている。まだ少しだけ余裕がある。あれ一発で半径300メートルが炎の海に。
The southern field is already engulfed in flames. It's the first time I've seen a bombing like this.
やばいなあれ。
逆に、一つ落とせば、半径300メートルの安全地帯が一つできるって寸法だ。
当てられるの？
やるしかない。
He affixes his spear at the spear thrower and rests it on his shoulder. Luis's spear is no toy. The spear's tungsten alloy body is incredibly heavy to hold. What's unusual is that the long piece of cloth he's hooked up to the spear thrower. The same cloth is tightly wrapped around the edge of his spear. I initially thought that he'd wrapped the same spear in cloth to make it easier to hold, but I guess I was wrong. I have no idea what the point of the cloth is.
ここまで準備すると、僕の中にひらめきが落ちてくる。それに従って投げると、いつも以上によく飛ぶんだ。そして、指先で触れるように簡単に当てることができる。
Oh, that's cool.
だから、この距離は試したことないけど、きっとやれるさ。
So you can feel a connection between, almost like he can like pull a thread of fate and be like, the spear, I want to send it to this location, and he just gets the sense of exactly how his body needs to move to make it happen. Intercepting missiles with a spear. The very notion is absurd, fitting of a superhuman. Luis mentioned something offhandedly.
昔、友達を殴ったことがある。ちょっとした喧嘩で。友達はそれで死んでしまった。
Oh man. So he followed the thread with his punch and it led to the instant death.
次の日、黒服の男たちが来たよ。サッカーのテストなんて嘘さ。それも、年下の友達だった。
Oh man.
そう。
ここに志願したのは、自分を痛めつけるためさ。けど、もうこの生き方はやめる。停滞するのはもうやめだ。
俺も、そうしようかな。
No wonder we got along so well. We have, like, the same motivation. I look straight into each other's faces. Luis and I smile. We both declare that we'll do exactly that if we survive this.
小太郎、子供たちを連れて、先に行ってくれ。
先に？
君たちが移動するルートをまず確保する。角度の問題でその方がやりやすい。
ルイスは？
畑を抜けるまで経路を確保したら、最後に自分の周辺に落ちてくるやつを落とすさ。
Something is bothering me, but it's not something I can explain clearly. Maybe it's the fact that unless he has the ability to make the spear return to him, I think he doesn't get multiple throws here. I wish we could bring him along, but do as Luis says. Give Luis a look. Then I look at Jasmine. After a moment of thought, I nod.
わかった。
I ditch all my equipment, fasten the two younger kids on my front and back. Pulling Jasmine by the hand, I run toward the northwest. When I turn around, I see Luis is just about to make his first throw of the spear. Weak humans. Using their ingenuity, they have developed skills to exploit nature to fulfill their needs. Hunting, cutting, polluting. Human history is a veritable exhibit of environmental destruction. He makes a short dashing leap up into the pitch. From his wind-up until his throw, his form is no different than that of an athlete. However, there are countless little efficiencies woven over and over into his precise movements. The throwing angle, the controlled power, the pace, the snap. The accumulation of all those factors produce a dramatic effect that far surpasses merely throwing over the brute force arm strength. The cloth wrapped around the spear applies a strong rotational force to the spear moving straight ahead. In the way a bullet gains stability through spinning, Luis applies the same principle. Oh, that's cool. The flung alloy spear is sucked into the moonlit night with a nary a sound. followed the spear's path in utter amazement. The time when he struck down a familiar with it isn't even comparable to this. His throw is like an artillery weapon. The spear flies. It easily breaks free from the pull of gravity, zooming straight for its dot-sized target. Its cold beak pierces through the core of the missile. The tips of the spear practically melt straight into the missile, causing a jet to spray behind it.
やった
Luis winds up for a second throw. The supersonic spear pierces through the second missile. He shoots down the missiles that are about to land right in my path. Before I realize it, we're already surrounded by walls of fire. Even though the explosions are quite distant, the shockwaves from the blast are still strong. The smell of fuel wafts in the air. It's suffocating, but we don't have any time to rest. Flashes of light burst from all directions, incinerating the ground. It's like a bunch of tiny suns are falling onto the earth. Waves of heat assault us. The screams and cries of the kids are drowned out by the thunder's roar of bombs and flames. A bomb hasn't dropped in front of us yet. If our escape route was cut off, we're finished. Suddenly, my side bumps against the fence. Beyond it lies desolate ground.
助かった
I vault the fence and move behind a boulder that can serve as a barrier before putting the kids to rest. I look for Luis from atop the boulder. Our escape route is like a tiny wedge cut out of the Inferno. At the very tip of that route, Luis stands. He hasn't budged a single inch from where we started. He doesn't have a single spear left. Our eyes meet.
外れ
I wave him over, but Luis shakes his head from side to side. He raises his hand like some kind of gesture of farewell, with a smile on his face. Moments later, flames engulf the place where Luis had just been. I fall to my knees.
そういうのやめろよ
The fire blankets the entire area. It's a veritable sea of flames. In these circumstances, even a superhuman would. Even though I fully understand it, my mind and my body refuse to accept it. Cold sweat breaks out across my entire body. The drug production facility in the distance is ablaze. The scene is reminiscent of a war in a faraway country, like I've seen before on TV. Faraway country? But that's exactly the land I'm standing on right now. War? But that's exactly what's going on right now. I stand still for a long time, like I've taken a hard blow. The only reason I'm able to recover is that there are others here who I need to protect.
行こ
ルイス
う後で彼のために祈る
Jasmine's expression nearly crumples, but she doesn't cry. The kids have burn wounds and are weakened. I have no choice but to carry both of them on my back and my arms, just as I had earlier while we escaped. Relying on my maps and compass, we make our way through the wilderness. Because I can't carry Jasmine, her fatigue is severe. She quickly loses the energy to even speak. According to the map, there are no towns nearby. Unless we find a car, we're literally gonna die like dogs by the roadside. I'll have to figure out what to do after that, too. Even if I find a town, we don't have any money. We need water and help. This honestly feels hopeless. Are we really beyond salvation at this point? Oh my gosh. All the routes we could take, all the possibilities, but our gut is gonna take us where we need to go. And I'm going home alive. My determination makes a rather bold choice. Jasmine grabs onto my belt, practically dragging her feet as she walks. 3 children. I even betray my own comrades to rescue them. This decision may have cost me the one place where I could belong, but I rescued them. I couldn't accept it. I'm nervous that I can't be someone to anyone anymore. That's the sort of decision I've made. I have to find my reason to live with my own power. Jasmine loses consciousness. I stop marching and lay all 3 down. They're already at their limit. Without a single drop of water, I can't force them to keep going any further. At least not until a miracle happens. Not unless a miracle happens. Rewrite. Interesting. I mean, it makes sense. Miracle is what we need. I don't feel like I think this literally isn't a choice, but how are we going to rewrite ourselves here?
やってみるか
I wish for it. The power gushes forth from the core of my body. It spreads throughout my entire body, invigorating my cells. As usual, I feel myself losing something in exchange.
そうか命を力に変えているんだな
That's what all of them do. That's literally what all superhumans do. I understand now. That's why I have an instinctual fear associated with rewriting. It's like I'm shaving off my lifespan to add to my power. This power comes at a price. The price for that miracle of instant level up is several years of my life.
いいさ。持っていけよ、どの道。いつ死ぬともわからないんだ。
When I finish rewriting, I get the same anemic dizzying sensation. Maybe it's similar to the feeling of being drunk? In fact, after finishing such a major rewrite, I totter about near intoxicated stupor for a while. The first thing I notice is the improvement in my eyesight. I can see clearly for quite a distance. It's like I'm using binoculars. My 4 limbs are brimming with power. Now, maybe I can...
いいか。助けになるようなものを探してくる。
The little girl opens her groggy eyes. She shakes her head feebly.
ここでいい。もう助からないと、せめて静かな
No,
ここで。
don't give up.
だから小太郎だけでも。
断る。好きなように生きることにしたんだ。ルイスの分まで。自分勝手に生きてやるんだ。
I grasp her hand. Her grip is weakening.
車を持ってくる。水と薬も。死ぬのはいつでもできるだろう。休み。
She sheds tears. She falls asleep, or rather passes out. Okay, time to consider our options. Fetch me again, just like so many choices you could make, but he knows the one. Running feels so light in my new body. I run at an absolute beastly speed without any feelings or imbalance. That's because I've also developed a sense of control, the senses to control it. Thanks to that, I'm not as confused by the terrain as I was earlier. Even though it seems to be scenery I've seen before, I can manage to spot the small differences. As a hunter, I managed to reach a much higher level. Looking around me from the hill, I spot something that looks like a farm to the south. It's not on the map, but it's definitely there. There's also a pickup truck on the farmland. It smells like people are living there. I get rid of my rifle, but I still have my handgun and knife. I won't understand what the other is saying anyway, so I might as well try my hand at some banditry. It's the very first time I'm attempting armed robbery. Things more or less fall into place. I managed to pick up the kids safely and have them treated. Since I haven't gotten any facial hair, I probably look like a kid too. Even though I threatened them at gunpoint, the old couple on the farm were nice to me. Aww, fetch me. After a few days, I resolved myself and returned to the camp. They hadn't treated me like a traitor, but as a non-returnee. Almost every team that participated in the operation was wiped out. Apparently, the bombings in the neighboring country had engulfed even the field base we'd set up. I'm the only survivor from Valiant Team. After explaining what happened, they didn't find anything suspicious and immediately released me. Because I was close with Luis, I was ordered to organize his belongings. It pained me to do it, but I was putting his things away. I managed to come to terms with his passing. I decided. I'm done being stuck like this. I'm giving Jasmine a part of my savings and moving her to a relatively safe city. I have her bring the other 2 kids with her. Poverty had put them in a difficult situation. Jasmine was a summoner, sure, but she wasn't hostile like the other fanatics, so I'm not lumping her together with them. She was just being used. She said that the true monsters were the plants that they were being forced to grow in that area. They are cheap, can be grown in large quantities, and can be harvested several times a year. The crop eats away at a country's soul. Secrets are embedded in the deepest parts of the world. They're hidden, with only a select few being able to manipulate them. My days on duty are tedious and dangerous, but I learned ways to use the organization. Ever since that drug bust operation, I've become more competent. People don't belittle me as much now. You also increase your power, which is cool because like it kind of shows that relation. He found that sense of like self-deterministic, that kind of like rebellious nature, and he strengthens himself, sacrificing his life force to do it. That's essentially what all the superhumans do. But we get to see like that transition in his mental state, which is really, really cool. Rather, I'm the one pushing others away from me. Now I'm even more of a lone wolf within the organization. But at least I won't get hurt anymore. I hate arrogant jerks, and I'm not going out of my way to associate with them. This feels about right as a human being. During my travels, I'll sometimes meet some nice people. I'm satisfied with that. Once in a while, I hid from the organization to help with summoner escape. On rare occasions, I bump into superhuman before they get apprehended. Jasmine would take care of the minor details, all the while going to school. It's resulted in a gathering that includes both summoners and superhumans. Despite what others have said, the two were never irreconcilable. I believe that the conflict between Gaia and Guardian simply stems from a chain of revenge and conflicting interests. To be blunt, it's because they're human. The majority of the money I make goes to Jasmine's bunch. As time passes, the group grew in size. Ever since Jasmine and the others started managing funds, a lot of things got easier for me. I don't show my face to them directly. If we screw up and have to make contact with me, they'll be marked by the organization. The group is full of people even younger than me. For some reason, I've been deified as a ghost leader. There are even rumors that I'll one day appear to take command of them. Personally, I don't intend for that group to be anything more than an orphanage, so my head hurts just thinking about it. They're neither Gaia nor Guardian, but a third force? That's not such a bad thought. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that has some interesting potential. Speculation, investigation, and missions. I learn all sorts of things and continue thinking. Thankfully, I still haven't died.
俺は停滞せずに進めてるだろうか。
After a few months, I receive a message from Japan. It's from Asaka. Ooh. That's crazy. Okay, I think we're gonna end here because we're going back after that, and we have this like group of like orphaned refugees, superhumans, and summoners. What are we doing? That's crazy. What? I'm super invested in that. I can't wait to see what that grows into. Wow, it's almost like it's his new ORS in a weird way. But yeah, it hasn't been that long, has it? Like maybe a year or two? So we still have some decent amount of time between like what's happening now and the events that will be like what we're familiar with the other routes. So that might mean we might have like a functioning group at that point, which would be insane. It'd be so crazy. Anyway, we're going to end things here. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for being a part of the channel, for being a part of this great journey with me. Oh, that was cool. It was oh my gosh, Luis, like I knew it was going to happen, but it was still really sad. It wasn't like a tear jerk. It felt very, very, very sad. It's one of the sadder points we've seen in this entire series, and honestly, with and it's so sad to form of being in a situation where your life's on the line and you're going through these like areas where you're surrounded by and being attacked by people who are like literally trying to kill you, and you watch them kill people whom you've been serving with, and then like you turn to a room expecting more like combatants, and you immediately open fire because like a split second can mean the difference between life and death. A hesitation could mean you're done, and you accidentally attack civilians. And they weren't even civilians. They were like essentially conscript child soldiers. And that's so sad because it actually happens. Luis is a hero and probably one of the coolest characters we've seen in this whole series. I really liked the narrative that they took and how powerful it was for where the story is trying to go and what it's trying to represent, and how despite being in Guardian, Kotarou is now estranged from them, and he's just like, nope, I don't think you're right either, which has always been the path I think he's destined to take. It was the path that I felt the most resonance with, was like when he's stepping away from the dogmatic beliefs of both extremes and trying to forge a new path. I really personally can resonate with that, and so I really like that. And I'm really impressed with a way that they could handle these really heavy topics, but without it feeling like shilling or trying to downplay the horrors of it all, or like trying to make it like, oh, these are bad people, these are good people. It's like, no, they're people. Like, I like the message of ReWrite ultimately is that people are people. And despite our differences, we're all kind of the same. Despite how much we try and to try and designate each other as like bad guys and good guys. It's like, no, we're all just people. Really, really powerful messaging. I'm really, really pleased with this. I'm sad, but I also was just in awe of just how powerful that story and sequence was. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see now that we're back in Japan, after all that craziness, what is life going to be now? What are we getting caught up in this time? And how is it going to fold into the paths that will come and the people whom we still cherish in Kazamatsuri? So yeah, that'll be really interesting. Thank you so much again for being here, especially to patrons and members for your direct support. It means the world to me, and I'm going to do my best to be worthy of that support and make content and be consistent to make sure that we have some great stuff to build together. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you feel you're getting your money's worth. And just know that you can stop, or like no one has to support me. I'm so happy just to have people here who are watching the series, who are part of this community. I'm really grateful for that support, but don't feel pressured. I just want all of us to be able to be here, and I want to make the channel the best I can make it. So thank you for your vote of confidence and for spending your time with me. But until the next video, watch me up and see me in next. I'll see you there.